in the tumultuous waters of the North Sea on April 8, 1940. A David and Goliath showdown was about to unfold. HMS Glowworm, a British destroyer weighing only 1,345 tons, found herself isolated from her fleet. Fate soon placed her against the colossal 10,000-ton German cruiser Admiral Hipper. The disparity was overwhelming, not only in size, but also in firepower. Hipper was armed with 8 8-inch guns, 12 4.1-inch guns, and 37 mm guns, far outmatching Glowworm's for 4.7-inch guns. Glowworm's path to this confrontation had been marred by misfortune. While searching for a man swept overboard in rough seas, she lost contact with the main British force. To make matters worse, her gyrocompass failed, forcing navigation by magnetic compass alone. At dawn, she spotted an unidentified destroyer that quickly revealed itself as hostile. A fierce and relentless battle followed. Outgunned and battered, Glowworm pressed forward, her decks ablaze and her hull torn apart. Yet her captain, Lieutenant Commander Gerard Roope, had one last move. As the distance between the ships closed, it became clear that Glowworm's intent was to ram the German cruiser. For those who study World War II, understanding military history requires more than surface-level knowledge. This is where Babbel, one of the world's leading language learning platforms, proves invaluable. By unlocking languages such as German, enthusiasts can dive into original sources and personal accounts from the war. Each lesson is designed and narrated by real native speakers and linguistic experts, offering an authentic learning experience. Beyond German, Babbel offers 14 languages, including Spanish, Italian, French, and Russian, with a 20-day money-back guarantee. With their current Black Friday offer, learners can get 60% off and begin speaking a new language in as little as 3 weeks. The Royal Navy's 1933 construction program led to the order of a new destroyer that became part of the Gallant class. Glowworm was built by John the First Thornycroft and Company in Woolston, Hampshire. She was launched on July 22, 1935, and completed on January 22, 1936, weighing 1,350 long tons, or 1,883 fully loaded. She measured 323 feet in length, with a beam of 33 feet and a draft of 12 feet 5 inches. Powered by steam turbines generating 34,000 shaft horsepower through 2 shafts, she could achieve a maximum range of 5,530 nautical miles at 15 knots. Glowworm initially joined the first destroyer flotilla of the Mediterranean Fleet, where she undertook escort missions, including accompanying King Edward VIII during his Mediterranean cruise. During the Spanish Civil War, she patrolled Spanish waters to enforce the Non-Intervention Committee's policies. In night exercises, she suffered accidents, including a collision with her sister ship Grenade, but repairs were swiftly completed. When war broke out in September 1939, after Germany's invasion of Poland, Glowworm was stationed in Alexandria. The following month, her flotilla was transferred to the Western Approaches Command, sailing back to the UK with her sister ships. There, they were assigned to convoy, escort, and anti-submarine patrols. Despite being smaller than other destroyers, Glowworm proved her worth with her impressive 36-knot speed. She carried 4 4.7-inch guns, anti-aircraft weapons, depth charges, and 4 torpedo tubes, and also served as a test ship for new quintuple torpedo mounts. For anti-submarine defense, she carried up to 35 depth charges. By late 1939, she was transferred to Harwich and joined the 22nd Destroyer Flotilla, continuing her patrols in the North Sea. In early 1940, while sailing in fog, she collided with a Swedish ship and sustained structural damage. After repairs in Hull, she rejoined the home fleet at Scapa Flow. On April 5th, she was assigned to escort the battle cruiser Renown during Operation Wilfred in Norwegian waters. Covering mine-laying operations in contested seas, events soon escalated as Hitler launched his invasion of Norway, catching the British off guard. The Royal Navy responded cautiously, reluctant to intervene directly in Norwegian affairs until Germany's intentions were undeniable. To safeguard British convoys, the main fleet remained distant from Norway's shores, while smaller units were tasked with laying mines and intercepting German forces near the coast. During one of these missions, tragedy struck. On April 6th, in a fierce storm, a torpedoman named Ricky fell overboard from Glowworm. Captain Roope requested permission to break away from the group to search for the missing man. But the destroyer never rejoined her fleet. For 2 days, she and her sisters searched without success. Clee, the comrade, and in the process, Glowworm lost all contact with the main force. Conditions worsened, and the destroyer found herself alone, sailing into a fate that would etch her name into naval history. The weather worsened, forcing Glowworm to slow to less than 10 knots. As if conditions were not already difficult enough, the ship's gyrocompass failed, leaving the crew to steer only with a magnetic compass. The next morning, another sailor went missing, though this time the man was found tangled in ropes trailing over the side. The crew knew he was beyond saving, and many took it as a terrible omen. One sailor later recalled that for 2 mornings in a row, something tragic had happened, and they all wondered what the 3rd morning would bring. On that bleak morning, Lieutenant Commander Gerard Roope stood on the pitching bridge of his ship, only 35 years old. He was already a seasoned officer with a strong reputation in the Royal Navy. His men admired him, affectionately calling him Ard. Known for his sudden and dramatic changes in course, Roope kept his crew steady in spite of the storm and their misfortunes. They hoped to rendezvous with another British group, staying vigilant against nearby German units. Nothing, however, could have prepared them for what awaited on their path as the sun struggled to rise. Dim light spread across the sea, and Glowworm suddenly came upon two large German destroyers, Paul Jacobi and Bernd von Arnim. The nearest vessel attempted to deceive them, signaling that it was Swedish. But before the ruse could sink in, the enemy opened fire. Roope and his crew were thrown into a perilous battle against superior firepower. On paper, Glowworm stood no chance. Her smaller guns and lighter frame made her a poor match for the German destroyers. Yet Roope engaged boldly. Despite heavy seas flooding the gun director tower, Glowworm scored at least one hit as she zigzagged and fought relentlessly. The chaos of the storm claimed to more of her men, swept overboard, but still the crew held their ground. Suddenly, the German destroyers broke away. Packed with soldiers bound for Norway, they seemed to be leading Glowworm toward something far more powerful. Roope realized the danger, but pressed on, determined to gather intelligence on the enemy's movements. His persistence soon brought him face to face with the cruiser Admiral Hipper. Through gloom, spray, and mist, the immense warship loomed 5 miles to the north. Under ordinary conditions, Roope might have tried to shadow the cruiser and report her course. But the storm made this impossible. Instead, he resolved to take a stand and fight. Hipper, bound for Norway and carrying troops, was heavily armed with massive guns. The threat was overwhelming, yet Roope would not be deterred. He ordered torpedo attacks, but the rough seas and distance caused all 10 to miss their mark. Glowworm burned as shells from Hipper tore into her, the engine room ablaze and damage mounting. One gun was disabled, a rangefinder destroyed, and the upper yard of the mast collapsed, setting the sirens screaming uncontrollably. In the face of destruction, Roope made a daring choice. He would ram the German cruiser, even as the radio room transmitted vital intelligence to London, warning that large German units were approaching Trondheim. Roope calmly turned to his helmsman and ordered the ship toward Hipper at 20 knots. Glowworm sailed straight into the cruiser's starboard side. The Germans could not avoid the charge. With a deafening crunch, her bow smashed into Hipper's armor plating, tearing open 130 feet of her side. The collision sent men sprawling across the decks amid fire, blood, and seawater. Those who survived the impact picked themselves up and continued to fight, although damaged. Hipper was forced to take on 500 tons of water and listed badly. Glowworm, however, had paid dearly for the strike. Her bow was crushed, her superstructure shattered, and fires raged through the ship. Listing forward, she began to drift away, yet still managed to fire back, landing a close-range hit from only 400 yards. German bombardment then rained down with merciless force, pounding the crippled destroyer. In the chaos, Petty Officer Scott manned the last working gun and kept firing. On the bridge, Roope remained calm, even smoking a cigarette, but he knew the moment had come to put his crew's safety first. He gave the order to abandon ship, and the sailors began making their way into the freezing water. Though injured, the captain showed remarkable leadership, helping with the evacuation and ensuring the wounded were fitted with life belts in the hope they might stay afloat. As the crew struggled in the rough sea, disaster struck. Glowworm exploded and overturned, hurling the remaining men into the icy waters, now thick with fuel oil. Roope himself ended up on the ship's keel, where he managed a grim remark to a petty officer that they would not be playing cricket again anytime soon. On board, Admiral Hipper, Captain Helmuth High immediately acted to save the survivors. He maneuvered his cruiser downwind of the sinking destroyer so the exhausted men in the water could drift closer to safety. Despite the perilous conditions, his crew, joined by German soldiers, worked tirelessly to pull the survivors aboard. Many, however, were too cold and weak to hold on to the ropes and slipped away beneath the waves. Among those rescued was Lieutenant Robert Ramsey, the torpedo officer and the only officer to survive. The Germans treated the survivors with respect, wrapping them in blankets and massaging their limbs to restore circulation. Roope, who had fought valiantly to save his men, ultimately succumbed to exhaustion and the freezing water. Captain High showed unusual compassion, keeping his cruiser in position for over an hour to rescue as many men as possible. The bravery of Glowworm's crew did not go unrecognized. High himself admitted that their torpedoes had come dangerously close to striking their target. The German sailors expressed admiration for their enemy's courage and cared for the survivors with dignity. After the battle, Admiral Hipper continued on to Trondheim, while Glowworm disappeared beneath the waves. In an extraordinary gesture, Captain High sent a carefully worded message through the International Red Cross to the British Admiralty, recommending Gerard Broadmead, Roope, for the Victoria Cross, Britain's highest award for valor. In July 1945, the London Gazette officially announced the posthumous award of the Victoria Cross to Roope. Lieutenant Ramsey received the Distinguished Service Order, and 3 enlisted men, including Petty Officer Scott, were awarded the conspicuous Gallantry Medal. Only 31 men survived the encounter, but their sacrifice became a lasting testament to the spirit of the Royal Navy.